Well,
It's already there.
what? It's already there.
Already there.
I don't know. I think it was here before. It's not mine.
Are you already threatening
That's
people?
stuck in my head. I don't know. I was just. Yeah. Oh yeah. No, I was just playing with the stunt prop. There's no way I'm tossing the same one.
Dance, magic dance. Dance, magic dance. Put that magic spell. Slap that baby. Oh, hey, look at that.
We got. Are those
names.
actual
We have names.
name tags for us? Oh, fantastic. Oh.
Aww.
I am not.
You don't need names. I'm just gonna pull from the bin. I'm just gonna pull from the bin. Just pull from the bin. All right. How's everyone doing? Oh, good. You're doing better than me. For those of you who saw us walking around, this crown is actually about 14 pounds of plastics and castings. I dread to think what it would have been like in ancient Egypt when they used wood and heavier beads than what I've got access to. So, and yeah, actual gold instead of spray paint. I love automotive paint. But yeah, when we finally had it done, it wound up being a 14-pound crown. So every chance I get to take it off. Although this looks kind of weird, doesn't it, without the crown? Isis lost her head, literally. So it's based on the Cleopatra crown from Liz Taylor's Cleopatra. The whole outfit is. We did a lot of cheating on this outfit in the sense that, we made some personal variations on it, and on their outfit for her, because they were shooting out in the desert, and it was extremely hot. When they did these wings on her outfit, they did it with black mesh and hand-stitched down each of the wings in order to have air flow through, because lame doesn't breathe, but mesh does. So I'm going to have the girls pass this around so you can get a nice feel for it. Now, you look at mine, and it's very sparkly inside, whereas hers was just plain black. When we got the sucker under stage lights, we saw the reflection and thought, oh my God, that's so beautiful. So even if you're replicating something, it's fine to throw your own twist in. All that is cheapy gold lame that has been mapped out and fabric painted to get the effect. Now you'll feel there's a little bit of weight to it. When you're using fabrics and things that you want that lovely, beautiful hang to it, we use fishing lures. Fishing lures are beautiful, but they're lead, don't suck on them. Hammer them nice and flat. You can see they're just at the tips of the bottom of the front of the wing, and that's just so you get that great hang. Again, they used a mesh, which is a lot stiffer. But I looked at the mesh and I thought, that's not going to look as great on stage. Movie magic does a lot of things to props and costumes to get the effect. And you're walking around, or you're on stage, or you're competing, or whatever, you want that bang right off. So we made some variations. Fabric paint sticks to a lot. Fabric paint will stick to almost any kind of fabric. Now, you're sitting there and you're going, oh yeah, well, that'll eventually come off. This outfit and the two gods were created in 1995. And I started swinging a sword shortly after that. So I have not redone the upper part of this outfit. As you can see, I gained muscle. There's now this piece of fabric we just stuck in there. Yeah, these outfits have been around in our life since 1995. So I'm going to start with them and keep going with them and give you, now we're not going to pass this around because of its weight.
And it's pretty delicate too.
And it's gotten more and more delicate as the years go by. We used cocoa beads for the back beads because cocoa is the lightest wood you can find. And when they do cocoa beads, when they make them into silvers and golds and metallics, they coat them. So you get a very natural metallic look instead of having something that's a glossy plastic look. It's really, so you get a more authentic look when you go for the wooden beads that have been coated. Cocoa beads is the lightest kind of wood you can get. Even with that, the amount of weight on the back, we had to counterweight it, because you'll notice there's no chin strap on this crown. We did it the same way the Vegas showgirls did it. We counterweighted with fishing lures. We basically hammered them nice and flat and started filling the front of the crown until the back and the front weighed the same. So when you saw me walking around, I never did this. Because suddenly, same with this, you can't look up. I love it. One of the security guys said, "See that escalator up there?" And I'm like, "Yeah."
I'll take your word for it.
It's up there somewhere. So when you're not going to use chin straps, when you're going to do it the way the professionals do it, expect the weight to be a lot heavier. We're going to get into molding and casting. We're going to go over it quickly, but all of these are molded and casted out of fiberglass resin, the same stuff you use for automobiles and for boats and everything like that. We'll get to that in a moment, but it's easy to find, it's cheap, it's quick to mold with, but please, the biggest piece of advice we can give anyone, open some windows or do it outside, please.
Use it in a well-ventilated area.
And if you live in an apartment building, keep in mind that your fan in your washroom's probably attached to everyone else's. Your neighbors will stop loving you pretty quick.
But only for a short period of time.
I guess Anubis is the best one to pass around, isn't it?
Yeah.
Anubis is going to get passed around because he's a lot lighter than the Cleopatra head. Anubis is paper mache. Yes, he was made in 1995.
AD or BC?
Smart ass.
BCE.
Anubis basically was created by carving out the shape, and if you look inside, you'll still see the newspaper. We didn't bother painting the inside. It's great. I swear these two, when they're in their masks, they're reading. They're just standing there, blah, 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 blah.
I can't focus on this anymore.
But what we do when we do these kinds of masks, especially for stage performances, is we carve them out of the blue insulation foam. So we glue the layers together, we carve the shape, and each paper mache layer is completely left to dry for 12 to 24 hours. So there's absolutely no moisture left in the paper. So as Anubis comes around, he's approximately 8 or 9 layers.
About that, yeah.
So he's really thick, and then you just lacquer it, and then you can sand the lacquering, and then lacquer it again, and then do your paint job. Don't do your paint job first, because the paint job will just soak into the paper. And then you'll be sitting there forever trying to spray paint to get the great colors. So that's, again, 1995, he's faded a bit. He used to be a lot glossier, a lot darker. We've touched him up a few times with just some watercolors. But yeah, that's paper mache. You can do a lot. The ears were cardboard, and we paper mache'd over top of the cardboard to seal it all in. And you can have a prop or something be really, really light, and it'll last you for quite some time. So that's the simplest form of getting things like masks and stuff. Now,
Was the foam removed after you did the paper mache on it?
For the most part, actually, in the end of the nose, we've still got about 2 or 3 pieces of foam that we couldn't dig out. A way that you can get it to be able to remove it is either wrap it in cellophane wrap or something like that, but then it's harder to get your first layer of paper mache down because it'll slip around on the cellophane. So there's various other ways that you could actually, packing tape would be another way that would make it a little bit easier to remove the foam afterwards. So, but we got out what we could. We left what was in the nose because it doesn't obstruct anything for the person wearing the mask.
when we took out the foam from the inside, we basically cut it up with a knife and then took a large spoon and just dug it out. For those of you who have animals, piece of advice, make sure they're nowhere in the house until you clean up. It's really scary 2 days later when your cat comes running through the room and there's a piece of blue foam stuck to him.
Or a lot of blue foam stuck to it.
That stuff gets staticky. Let's go straight to molding and casting, the most common process used in the industry. Because you do a lot of this kind of stuff where you have the multiple shapes over and over and over and over and over. The biggest rule with casting and molding is if it's a hard form, it's a soft mold. If it's a soft form, it's a hard mold. Where is that? There it is.
Oh, yeah, that.
Yeah. This is really old, so we're not going to pass it around anymore. Basically, it's just plaster, but this was for kids, a kid's dinosaur face painting thing. So we had to make like 1,000 little dinosaur ridges for the noses. And it works out well. But this is just household plaster. It's really easy. And then you take liquid latex, you whip it up, you put makeup in it, and then you just brush it in and let it dry and let it dry and let it dry. This one used to go around on its own, but I'm going to ask either one of the girls or Ed, because he's so used to this, to walk it around by hand, because it is deteriorating.
It's actually, do we want to take the time to do that, or have
What?
people can come up and look at it later on?
Well, no,
It's
let
a
them walk
big
around.
one,
Yep. That way we can cram as much information in one little space as possible. Now, you'll see that the master inside, that one was made out of Fimo. And then it was, it was shaped how we wanted it to be shaped, and then the mold was poured.
The mold is 2 parts silicone. You can get them from various hobby supply stores, and you basically build a little box around the part that you want to make a mold of, and have the piece itself secured at the point where you want to be able to pour the resin afterwards. So that's the point that's touching the sidewall of the box. And then you mix up the silicone. It's usually like you have a silicone and a hardener component that you mix together. Pour it into the mold. Usually takes about between 8 and 12 hours to cure. And then what we did on that one, since it was a very quick, simple mold, is we pulled the box apart and we just used an X-Acto knife along the back of the snake's head to cut a slit in the mold to be able to spread it open, pull the pattern out, and then you close it up again, put it back in the box to hold its shape, and then you can pour in the resin and that sort of thing. One of the problems we had with that one, since it's sort of an S shape and you've got the little ball on top of the head, is there's a lot of places where air can get trapped in the mold. So you're starting by pouring a little bit into the mold, swishing it around, you tap it a few times, make sure any bubbles are rising to the surface, and you slowly fill the mold until it gets to the top, and you continually tapping it to get any air bubbles to come up. Some of these actually have some pretty sizable air bubbles, and that's why there are samples and not actually on the crown.
You must be patient.
Yeah. A little bit of practice. You'll get failures and figure out how the failures happened. And
We use the same process to make multiple pins. Those of you who are Star Trek, Star Wars, Stargate, anything that you want, you can get styrene from hobby shops and craft shops. You cut out your design, you create a box, same molding compound, pour it on into the box, pull away the sides of the box, and there you go, you got a mold. And you just keep pouring and pouring and pouring and pouring. Best piece of advice I can give people, and I give it all the time, is never pour it too thin. Because if you pour it too thin, fiberglass resin is designed to be mixed with fiberglass sheets in order to put on vehicles and boats. It is not meant to stand on its own.
do we still have
That
one?
was an imperial pin. That was a Romulan bird of prey. They snap really easy. This stuff is not meant to stand on its own. So please make sure your design is thick enough to hold its own power, its own ground. You can stick pins on the back, and everyone in your team can have a custom logo. And there you go, you're set for life. You can also use styrene to actually cut it out and paint. You don't have to make molds if you're just doing a one-off. Just use your styrene. Anywhere you can buy styrene, they'll have the same glue or the right glue, or depending on the type of plastics.
Yeah. Well, probably the easiest glue to find for styrene is your regular tester's model glue. I mean, all model kits are made out of styrene anyway, so. And the styrene, probably the best places would be places like model train shops. And you do a lot of this sort of dioramas and little buildings and things like that.
Now, way back, I keep dating myself. Way back, when we used to work for Paramount Home Video doing all their public promos and stuff, We got the measurements and the schematics, and we got to see what, you know, how tricorders and phasers and stuff were built and what size they were. So we had to do it for a whole bunch of actors. We had to make props and gadgets that function much like the ones in the series. And so what we did is, again, your styrenes and your plastics, we glued them together, created this, and did a 2-part mold. Now, this one you can see you pour solid. 2-part molds are a little trickier. I'll get you to pass that one. Don't, because the molds are deteriorating, just do what Ed's doing.
Walk it around.
Just let anyone see it who wants to see it. So a 2-part mold is a little more work. Go for it.
Since you're molding something that has detail both on the inside and on the outside, you want to be able to pull it apart a little more easily. So what we did with that one is, this is the Star Trek Phaser 1 from Next Generation. We laid them out in the mold box like we would before. Did a little bit of plasticine or a little bit of blocking to cover up any areas that might flow underneath the part. Filled it with the silicone resin. Once that was cured, we'd pull that apart. The pieces would be in the silicone, and the insides of the pieces would be untouched, so they would be voids in the area. So what you do is you can use Vaseline, you can use a spray-on mold release, you rebuild the box around the part with your part facing up, and you pour silicone over it again. Once that silicone is cured, the mold release between the layers keeps it from sticking to itself, and you can pull the pieces apart, and you've got an inside and an outside of the actual part that you're molding. And then when you're pouring them, you're basically doing the same thing as pouring it in, closing the mold up, letting it sit until the resin is cured.
Do not be afraid to let your imagination go. We do in the industry. It's amazing how many things wind up in a garbage can after you pulled it apart for just the piece you wanted off of it. Star Wars fans, that's a lady shaver.
No, it's a Jedi communicator.
And it became a Jedi communicator. Yep, that's right. Lucas looked at a lady shaver and went, oh, hey.
It's a neat shape.
And that's a Jedi communicator. All they did was they glued everything on, sealed it up to make sure there are no holes, you know, primers and other paints. It's good to spray some things to seal up any holes or stuff that your molding compounds can get into that you don't want it into. And you just keep casting communicators until you're blue in the face. But yes.
Unless you're in a well-ventilated area, and you hopefully don't go blue in the face.
This is true. That's off the Stargate, the episode with all the bugs. They actually did bury the actors in them, but they're little plastic bugs. And then they CGI'd any one of the ones they wanted to move around the ones. But again, it was just a 2-part mold, top and bottom. Just poured in. And then automotive paints for you guys. In the film industry, of course, we've got the professional painters who come in and do everything to get the right look to them. But all of this stuff, I mean, the older stuff before we got into the actual industry is all automotive paints, automotive paints, automotive paints. The stuff bites into anything. It's designed to spray paint a car. I'm not sure where they get it in the States.
Well, any place that sells automotive supplies, I don't know, Pep Boys or somewhere like that.
Forever. It bites into your plastics, it bites into your fiberglass, and it doesn't let go.
Make sure you have a good clean surface, of course, before painting.
One of our other favorite paints to work with is shoe spray. My favorite is Magic, but it's harder and harder to find, M-A-G-I-X. I know there's some counterparts. Don't go and buy the Prep, because the Prep stuff is just basically acetone. Go buy cheap nail polish. It's a lot cheaper. And you just clean down your leather or your vinyl and spray, spray, spray. We made a whole bunch of kid-friendly Klingon things that we could put on their shoulders for pictures and stuff. And that's what we did, is we bought a huge bolt of white vinyl, cut out the pieces, and used shoe spray. This piece is 1991?
Probably about that, yeah.
This piece is 1991. It was white. Yes?
And it's been to several panels, and the stuff is not crumbled or flaked off or cracked or anything.
I know this will come back to me. Whee! That piece has been handled by panels since '91, and all it is a little piece of vinyl with shoe spray. That's all it is. On the same note of making fake look real, this is also fake. It is not real leather. It is, again,
You can definitely tell from the inside.
yeah, don't look at the inside. And what we did was we got a dark brown vinyl, which is a hell of a lot cheaper than leather. And you're only going to be wearing it when you feel like it. Although, please be aware that vinyl does not breathe. You will get hotter faster. And what we did was we sprayed it down in patches with various shades of shoe spray. Then we took sandpaper to some of the areas and sprayed it again, because it'll get a little lighter when you on the areas you sandpaper than the color that the actual spray is. And we just kept going until it looked like leather. Saved a ton of money, you know, and just, it looks good in photos, it looks right on camera. And again, because it's shoe spray, you can do it. There you go. Because it's a shoe spray,
Crazy.
it just bites in and allows the fabric to continue to move. And the effect is great, especially on stage. Brain, 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 brain. Brain, brain, brain. Casting, moldings, blah, blah, blah. Tricorders don't go around anymore.
Oh, basically it's a shoe spray-on dye, so you can get it in different colors. It's for, you know, if you buy a pair of shoes or something and you want to, that doesn't match the outfit, you go to a shoe supply store, a shoe repair shop, and they'll usually have a variety of different colors available for it. Yeah.
You're welcome. Casting and moldings, you know, again, like I said, the stuff we've done at home, like, I mean, that was all done in an apartment back in Toronto, Ontario, up in Canada, many, many years ago. A little more recent, same process, though. Oh, geez, I got close to the mic. Same process as this baby. You guys should know what that is. I hope you know what that is, or I'm really disappointed in you guys. This sucker came off the first set. This was a gift to Martin because he was one of the 5 people who rescued the original one that came from Oakley that was so monstrously huge. And they took a casting of the actor's face. We don't pass it around anymore because these were made with a combination of plastic and rubber so that it would easily slide on the actor's face. But over time, it no longer slides. There were 3 different versions of this made. There was this version, which is the one he wore. Well, he had about 20 of them, just because they kept breaking.
Spares.
Spares. There was 2 with the fluorescent tubes in it.
I think we made about 6 of them with the actual fluorescent tube for
For
visual
the
effects
effects guys
key
to
off.
reference. And then there's the one that folds when it's taken off of his face and folded up. You can come up and see it later on, but this is done, this is right off that set. This is done the exact same way as that in our home. So it is very feasible and very possible. Same with these, again, if you want to come up later and look at them. I don't know how big your final conflict was out here. But that came off the set. This is when backlighting was, oh wow, it really doesn't, the battery is really finally dying.
Yeah.
But they always did the Western switch thing. You know, there's the closed one. There's the open one. Okay, Western switches are cheaper than actual, you know. No.
What, not gonna do the Western switch?
Not in these outfits, please. And I don't know who was familiar with FX series. And again, the battery
Based
can't
on the
compete
movie.
with the lights. But Raleigh Tyler was left-handed. So they had to make left-handed versions of this PDA for him and then right-handed versions for the other characters. But it's all done the exact same casting way, the exact same process. You can do it all at home.
We used electroluminescent backlights, so like the flat light sheet sort of thing. It's not as commonly used anymore because it honestly is not very bright. For a lot of the props I do now in the industry, we're using edge-lit plexi, like an LED strip, edge lighting plexi with a bit of a grid engraved on it that scatters the light more, and it's quite intense. It's quite bright.
Metal. Plastic. Sorry, it's upside down. You feel insulted now?
I do.
Okay. This was hand cut because the machine gave out and the deadline was fast approaching. It was originally supposed to be brass on copper, not copper on brass. Copper is easier to cut. So suddenly the design was changed. But that was hand cut because the laser that cuts these things said, no, I'm not going to work this week. And deadline was fast approaching. This one is plastic, it's styrene. There's a huge weight difference. I'm not going to toss these because that's dangerous.
Ew.
Get one of the ladies to start going. There's a huge weight difference. Now, the key thing too with the plastic one is you can't really squeeze it or move it around a lot because unlike the metal, it really doesn't have the flexibility once it's in shape. However, it's a hell of a lot lighter. The metal one can leave a dent in your head, which it has in mine many times. So it's really a personal preference, and it's really how much patience you have. But the plastic one, again, all automotive paints, all craft store gems, all a reasonable price to put together. And a hell of a lot lighter. Brain. Padme's pistol. This effect, the sheen on it is a very different thing. It's not a paint. It's a process that you have to send away to get done.
This is called vacuum metallizing. It's very similar to chrome plating, but it can be used on plastics. Like almost every little toy space gun you can find in the toy stores that has that metallic look to it. It's all vacuum metallized. With the shop that I was working for at the time, we were doing a bunch of other items that needed to be vacuum metallized, so I took advantage of it and quickly made up the parts to make the Padme pistol and had that sort of sent in with the batch as well. Didn't cost any extra because there's a minimum charge that you usually have to pay.
If you want to go that route, there's two things. Number one, get together as a group because it will keep your costs down. And please, we've seen groups get together and do these processes before, and then someone in the group doesn't pay their portion. Please be good fans. Be nice geeks. The difference, that's automotive paint, that's vacuum metallizing. So there is a very visible difference. But this, this has been on and off a set so many times and abused and smacked and scratched at, and it still looks okay. This stuff, if you hit the surface with it,
It'll chip off.
it'll chip. So this is a lot more durable. Yes?
There's various companies here and there. You'd have to sort of look it up online or something, look up vacuum metallizing or plastic plating companies and see what you can find in your local areas. It's something there were a number of companies in Toronto that did it, but we're living in Vancouver, BC now, and we can't find a company that does it out there.
Nice and loud. The microphone's got to pick you up if we're going to keep it nice and fast, nice and loud.
Do you have any experience with chrome chemical plating?
Like the actual chrome plating?
They've got a simpler system now that's non-toxic. You just spray it on and it works on plastics.
Oh, okay.
Never used that.
I haven't seen that. I know there's a product called Mirachrome. It's a type of spray paint, but it's also a really delicate procedure. But yeah, I've heard that there are some other plastic plating methods now that are becoming very popular. So it's definitely something I'm going to start looking into.
You can make anything fake look real. That's Leia's Luger. Of course, all Star Wars did was added the extra piece, and then the two extra pieces. They went, oh look, a Leia is now a science fiction gadget. Cops on her so quick because they thought it was real. Please treat these like real things. having a cop on you really, and the poor cops, they were like, they're looking at a 12-year-old girl in Toronto, Canada. I mean, we're supposed to be friendlier up there. Go figure. 12-year-old girl holding on to this, pointing it at her friends. Yeah, I took it away from her pretty fast.
Treat every firearm as though it's real and as though it's loaded.
Now,
Can't stress that enough.
both of these have, and I'm pointing it up because even though it's a really weak laser, it's still a laser, technically. Super bright LEDs and lasers are really easy to pull apart and put inside these things. Right? And all that is one of those keychains, you know, those keychains that were really popular in the 90s. We bought a whole bunch of them. So this kind of thing is really easy. You know, look for those keychains. Like, places are still clearing them out to this day. It's hilarious. And just buy them up. Like, they're usually about 50 cents a
We
piece.
still have about 20 or 30 of those.
Do we?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
We should start using them.
With things that you're putting electronics in, how do you make sure there's access to put them in there if you're molding it, and access to replace the batteries when they die?
Right. Well, in terms of the molding, like the phaser one, that's one of the reasons we did it as a two-part mold, so that the pieces could be assembled, and then you can take it apart if you need to do any maintenance or anything. The little back cover piece, there's like a third piece that comes off the back, and that's access to take the batteries in and out. Things like this pistol, the sound chip is actually inside here. I believe we haven't had to take that apart, but the back end cap was sort of press fitted on, so we can pull that off if we need to get at the sound chip. And for the battery, we have a little screw here that you take the bottom of the hand grip off, and there's a big hole drilled up the center with a spring on the end and a contact down at this end to put the battery in.
There have been times when we've got a limited amount of material to make something, and we'll make like a cardboard dummy first and make sure everything fits and lines up. And then use that as the pattern for the plastics.
Like this one here, I think you actually, we actually have to take 2 screws off, take the thing apart, and there's a battery inside. So, yeah, it's a
Reusing.
matter of sort of, you pre-plan it and figure out what parts you want to use, how much space you need for them, and what's the easiest way to go, gain access to it.
One of the things I love about steampunk weapons is they really don't look like weapons. It's great. Like, I mean, that is obviously not a real gun.
What is it?
You want me to find out? This, again, is all found parts. Who can recognize the Dremel? You know, let your imagination go wild. This one doesn't have, like, doesn't have anything in it to make sound yet. Nice and loud so the mic can pick you up.
So, I have a question about foam, the EVA foam stuff. What do you suggest to use at the edges where there are seams, but there's also a level difference? What can you use to?
Oh, to fill it? It's a little tricky. Well, the EVA film, since it's so flexible, it's a little tricky if you're trying to do some filling. So it would probably almost be better to carve away. Like if you say you've got 2 different levels. If at all possible, make sure that your level difference is on the outside so that it's flush. Or if you do need 2 different levels and you need to blend them, you probably have to trim a bit away off the top level. There's nothing you can really use as a filler for EVA foam because it's flexible. Any fillers are just going to pop off. But once you've got it trimmed so that they're level, you can use sanding block. You can even use a palm sander, electric sander to smooth it up. Again, doing EVA foam, doing that, you're going to get a little bit more of a rough surface. It's a trickier thing to work with in those terms.
Slush casting. It's the same as the one that Ed was moving around with I think it was the bird and the snake. It was the snake.
Snake, yeah.
Except in this case, the plastics are poured inside, and you just keep going like this and hope to God you got every surface until you're sure the materials have stopped moving. And it's called slush casting. It's really a simple process. But this is a good way to keep the weight down because there's nothing inside it now. It's hollow.
How do you know how much you pour in?
Hang on, sorry.
Do you have a material you like to backfill your slush cast with?
It depends, not necessarily. I mean, I think that's actually the pattern one, but for the slush casting, I guess we could probably answer both questions at the same time.
Go for it.
If you pour enough the casting resin into it, you can get a thick enough wall that you're not at risk of it actually like breaking or cracking in your hands. I guess in terms of how much you use, you sort of have to figure out what the surface area of your prop is and how thick you want the wall, and do a little bit of calculation to figure out the volume of material that you would need on that.
Yeah, we go through a lot of test pieces and, sorry?
Math.
Oh,
Who would have thought building things would involve math?
go for it, nice and loud.
For big props, I've had good luck with using expanding foam.
Yes.
To fill in and give a little more strength.
The one thing we do warn you about anything that's an expanding material is the chemical reaction. If you get it wrong, you can overheat and destroy your mold.
Yeah.
So don't get that
Or
wrong.
if you,
Yay!
or if you inject too much into your part, thinking, oh, that can't be enough to expand in there, and then you realize, no, this stuff expands to like 5 to 10 times its volume, and suddenly your part is looking like a watermelon or something, or rupturing everywhere and stuff spewing out.
This was like the best independent film ever. Quick, go for it. Sorry?
The knife is
Knife?
hand-cut styrene.
Oh, the knife is out there, isn't it?
Yeah, no, that's what he was
Okay.
just holding up.
Oh,
Stage lights, I can't see.
I know, I'm wearing contact lenses because I'm nearsighted, but the damn things only correct me to standard vision. I wish it didn't. I wish it like overcorrected. That would be so cool.
You need telephoto contact lenses.
Yeah!
What's the, what's the,
27 years together, and I still
I
haven't
know.
hit you for that one.
what's the plastic you use for the?
These are mostly.
Oh no, for the
Oh, for
slush
the
casting.
slush?
For a lot of the castings, you can get it's a urethane casting resin. I think you can buy Smooth-On products in the U.S. Look up Smooth-On online. They sell all sorts of different casting resins. The urethane resins are good because they cure pretty quickly. Like most of them will go off within about 5 minutes. So when you're doing a slush casting, if you were to use the polyester resin, the automotive fiberglass resin, that stuff takes like half an hour to cure. So you don't want to be sitting there rotating your mold for that long. So polyurethane or urethane casting resins.
Fake, real. This is actually worn down over the years. This is the same plastics as everything else that's been passed around. Sheet plastic, styrenes, things like this, right? Cut with a very large spring inside for a vampire movie we did years ago. We kept saying to the actor over and over again, because you see, the edge wasn't as obvious back then. The spring is not holding the weight as much anymore. It doesn't spring back as beautifully as it used to. But all we did was we said to him, we said, make sure you grab the correct one because this one doesn't retract. Yeah, that would be.
That was the most realistic scene ever. Oh no, we're gonna need a new vampire.
Again, very easy to make. It's just like a really long box, right? Keep your back cap off. Create this, put it in, right? Don't put your back cap on because this part won't go in. And of course, it just flares out, so it stops itself, right? What I did was I took a bunch of nails of varying shapes and sizes and sat there and scratched the whole surface. Put light paint down. Again, automotive paints is the light paint. Standard watercolor paints will stick to the automotive paint just fine. So after I put the light coat down, I put a darker coat down of 4 or 5 different shades of brown because Mother Nature doesn't believe in conformity. And then just wiped it all off clean, leaving all the different shades of darker color behind. And as for the knots, if you're into fingerprints, good luck, it's my baby finger. It's really easy. When you do something organic, let yourself go. Let your brain just let it happen. Because you can turn anything plastic into looking to something real. But yeah, what he did is he basically kept his hand over the seam, so you can't see the fact that that's where it's going in. We killed that vampire good. It was
Yeah, I think it was a bit of a vendetta because that vampire killed you first.
Yeah, that's true. My character died in that movie. It was painful. And he was one of those show-off actors that, I had to hit him a few times to say, okay, don't do that. Found objects, created from scratch. This was done on a
On a lathe.
On a lathe.
Yeah.
Right? Whereas that was found objects. So you can see, like, I mean, even though this is sort of a replica of an existing, yeah, it's Qui-Gon's, and this is an original design, it's still cool hanging off your hip. And this is all just buttons and panels and little things, went through a surplus store and just went crazy. The only drawback with doing it this way is, of course, you're working with different materials, so you're working with different glues. So always scratch up your surface, especially when you're working with metals and plastics, because the scratch may be the one thing that keeps your thing in one piece. Because the glue will not bite in on most cases. So we're going to pass these two around so you can see the difference between one that was done on a lathe and one that was done from scratch.
Various glues like two-part epoxies, hot glue. You could even use silicone, depending on what you got. If you need something, you need to fill a gap with the glue because you're trying to glue a hollow part onto it. So something thicker like silicone would work. As long as you do a little test or something and make sure that the silicone will actually stick to both parts and not pop off.
Now the unfortunate part with coming long distance is we have to really pick and choose what examples to bring. We've got two quivers in the collection. The one is done with leather and then the styrene is cut in the pattern and then glued down to the leather. But this one I brought this time only because the horn is actually not a horn, it's just wood. But this is one of our best examples of vacuum forming. I'm going to get that one started on this end. Vacuum forming is a process that either you have to build your own vacuum form table or you go to a company that does it. Basically, you make your original out of wood. I've seen them done out of plaster. I've seen them done out of clay. But you have to make sure there's some holes because the air is going to pull through the mold. And a vacuum form machine takes the plastics, heats it up on a hotbed, and then when it's just hot enough, they turn on the suction and they pull the thing down over your master. If you decide to go to a vacuum form company and you use plaster or you use any of the molding clays, please make sure it's properly complete. In other words, when you have plaster, don't use too much water. And molding clays, make sure you follow the instructions perfectly because there's a lot of pressure pulling down. And if you've got too much water in there or the process wasn't done properly, what happens is you destroy the original. So if you were hoping to get 2 or 3 out of it, you're sunk. If you don't care, then cross your fingers and good luck. Vacuum form companies will charge you per vacuum form whether it worked or not. So make sure you talk to the company ahead of time, ask them what their machine is the preferred materials.
And if you're doing small parts and you really want to try it at home, if you have a shop vac or something, you can build a little table using a little bit of pegboard from the hardware store, like from the building supply store, duct tape or whatever to seal the box for air, and you stick your hose into one end of the box, turn on the vacuum, and it'll create the draw. Heat up the plastic in an oven, preferably not the oven that you're using for food. So if you can find a cheap toaster oven or something, if it's the right size for the plastic sheet that you need to use, and then you basically need to make a small frame. Preferably out of metal would be best, but you could make it out of wood, like a little plywood frame or something. Possibly an embroidery frame from a craft supply store might work as a good alternative, and use that to hold your plastic. Because when you pull it over your part and the vacuum hits, it's going to want to pull the edges of your plastic in, and your part might not turn out very well. So having it clamped in a frame will keep the plastic nice and tight as it's being pulled down.
Now, back on the subject of weapons, I realized we left the aluminum blade in the car, didn't we?
Yeah, I think we
Damn it.
talked about that this morning.
Right, because we had to drop everything off first thing this morning and hide it in the panel room because after 3 hours of driving around looking for parking, we couldn't find any. So we're now parked, I don't know where are we parked?
3rd and Seneca.
Oh my.
Yeah.
So some
It's
of the
crazy
examples,
this year. I couldn't believe it.
some of the examples we brought are unfortunately in the car. I guess we're coming for 6 a.m. tomorrow morning so that we can get all the steampunk stuff up to our steampunk murder mystery tomorrow night.
It won't be as bad on Sunday as
Oh, good point.
Now,
'Cause we
do
sneak
people
all this
who
stuff
work
over-
downtown actually use the convention center parking garage? Or? Yeah, they were all full too. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So if you guys want to see all the steampunk stuff that's not with us at the moment, you're going to have to come to the murder mystery tomorrow.
And keep an eye out for our little robotic dog running around tomorrow.
Yeah, don't trip
We
over him.
we normally
It's
have
really
him
hurt
at the
when you
panel to
trip
talk about how we built him, but
Yeah.
we'll be happy to answer questions
If
if
we were
can.
not dragging the dog up from a parking lot, like,
Yeah.
no. The dog is heavy. And hey, you know, tomorrow, if you want to get us in a corner, we have no problems opening up things like the dog and talking to people about him. As a matter of fact, probably halfway through the day, because his charge doesn't last all day, we may have to find somewhere to plug him in and have lunch at the same time or something. But yeah, there's a few things we did bring down with us that isn't here because they're still in the car. I'm sorry, guys. But the bow obviously came to the panel. This bow was made from scratch from wood trim that you can buy at like any builder supply store.
It's oak, I think.
We soaked the wood in the bathtub. And while it's soaked, and we kept putting more hot water, more hot water, more hot water, just kept it soaking in hot water in the bathtub. While it's soaked, we cut out the shape that we wanted from 2 other blocks of wood. Basically, once this was saturated with hot water, we put it between the 2 blocks of wood, clamped them together, and let it sit there for a week. Took it out. Now it still relies on the string to keep its shape, but it kept its shape long enough to get the string on. It's just a standard string, may it never break. If you decide to do a fake bow this way, and of course this is an extra piece of wood put on with filler and stuff and then sanded smooth, same with the tips, they have a little bit of extra support on them to get the shape out of the tips in the center. If you do decide to do it this way, please keep in mind that this is technically a real bow. It probably will never shoot straight because we didn't do all the math, we just wanted the shape. And it probably, you know, would break if you try to shoot it too often, but it does shoot. Because this is the way they made bows back in history. We recommend that if you want to pose with a bow, this should not be the type of bow you are making unless it's in a set photo area where the convention or the event says it's okay to pose with this type of bow. Because if you accidentally dry fire this sucker, when you dry fire a bow, there's absolutely nothing against the string. So what it does is the string's pressure goes beyond the middle point and the bow goes like this, and you run the risk of the whole thing splintering and it becomes projectiles. Never dry fire a bow. If you want to pose with a bow, I highly recommend that you make a solid form bow out of plastics or carve it out of wood and put an elastic string instead. That would be a much safer prop bow. But this is the way they did it in history, and it's a very effective way. Again, you can come up and see this once we're done talking, because we don't pass this around anymore, because someone at a panel actually decided to find out what the weight was on the pole, and I nearly jumped him. Again, automotive paints, what we did for the patterning is we basically put tape, markered it out, took an X-Acto knife, cut out the pattern, took automotive spray, sprayed the pattern. And you get a nice clean edge. Okay? So you can do weapons the way they always did. I don't recommend it unless you're the type to just wear it around and never ever pose firing it unless the convention has given you permission. These are castings. These are not real, again, they're not metal. They're castings. Did the mold, did the original plastic version. Plastic version. Aha!
There it is.
Again, styrene. We just used the knife and just cut it until it looked like the head.
Well,
Took
files,
a casting
sandpaper,
from that.
yeah.
And then what we did in this case is we sanded down the tip of the wood, stuck it in the casting,
I
poured the
think we
plastic.
used the electric pencil sharpener.
Did we?
I think so.
Why am I-
Hey, it's a wooden dowel. It's it's a pencil without a lead.
You know, poured in this portion first, stuck it in, poured in the rest around it, and it just sticks to the wood just fine. Make sure it's dried completely, because we had one that didn't dry completely in the middle, and halfway through a photo shoot I pulled it out, you know, controlled environment, wind to pull, and I noticed the tip of my arrow was doing this. And I went, oh, what happened there? Tap, tap, crack. Oh, not that arrow.
It happens.
It does happen. You may want to check things like that before you leave the house. I saw the hand go up again. Nice and loud.
Can you suggest anything for the people that like to
What we do at the BC Renaissance Festival, something we did at the Ontario Renaissance Festival when anyone came in with back quivers. Side quivers are a very different thing. And what we did is we insist that people tie their arrows together so that they don't move around as much. And they can't pull them out and they can't be stupid with them. You can't really affect this space any creative way, like between the edge of the quiver and the top of there. If someone does this or this, there's really nothing you can do about it.
It's really up to the person wearing it to be aware of where they're.
But if you
arrows
tie
are.
all your arrows together, they become a solid mass, which means they are less likely to jump, which is what a lot of arrows will do, because they become a much heavier solid mass. You can't pose with them now, because they're all tied together, but that's what we do at the BC Renaissance Festival, is we tie the arrows together, and that decreases the chances of things happening. Yes, nice and loud.
What did you do for fletching the arrows?
Oh, all I do is go get turkey feathers, cut them out, and hot glue them down.
Craft stores, you can find the feathers. It usually takes a while to find enough feathers that look the same enough, look similar enough. For the green elven arrow, we drew a little template out of paper and cut the fletching to that size. And then, yeah, they're just glued down. And for the elven one, we actually did wrap a little bit of thin gold thread. Yes? Oh, okay.
There was a question earlier about the different kinds of paint that you suggest, especially for plastic things like steampunk weapons.
Automotive.
Yep.
Spray
Go to your
or-
auto supply.
Oh, spray. You can only
spray is
get it in
usually
spray.
best. If you're doing small details and things like that, you can definitely use brush-on paints because it's a little easier to control.
Hang on a second. So we technically only have 5 minutes. Now, they've told us because we're the last panel in here, I can talk to you face to face.
So,
They're not going to kick us out, but they do stop
so
recording
we
in
will
5
be
minutes.
allowing everyone
So,
to.
when it comes to paints and stuff too, I just use the cheapy dollar store watercolors for coloring wood and stuff because it seeps in really nice. You can lacquer it to seal it if you want. Feathers you cannot dye or color unless you want to learn the ins and outs of tie-dye. Tie-dye is the only dye that colors feathers safely. You can use watercolor paints, which is what I did to touch one of these up, but the feathers basically start sticking together, and then it becomes an icky mess. Whereas tie-dye does not. Tie-dye is what they do use for feathers. Please be careful with things like feathers, because when they get wet and they're fresh, if you didn't do the process completely, or you're using red, purple, or orange, and anything that with a red base, they do bleed. I've seen black feathers that weren't dyed properly also bleed. I always highly recommend that when you buy feathers, you dip them in water and you let them sit there until the water's turned whatever the color the feather is, and then pull it out and do not touch it, hang it so that it's fluffy. Don't lie it on anything, because when it dries, it will develop a memory. If you lie it on something, the feather will develop a memory and it'll be one-sided. Hang on, darling. See, that's automotive paint too. That's got lights and gadgets in it galore. You can come say, oh, the one thing I want to mention too is the phonograph. Printer's tin is heaven, folks. I love printer's tin. It's harder to get nowadays because more printing companies are not using tin, but there are still some schools out there who use it for their classes. Printer's tin, as you can see, is easy to paint because it's meant to have ink on it. And it's very viable, very lightweight. You can just cut it with tin snips. Please, sand or file down the edges because they can cut through your skin. Be careful while you're cutting it. But a lot of companies, well, not as many companies anymore, but schools now that have printing courses, once they've used the printer's tin for a pattern, they throw it out. Or they give it to one of those places to melt down and they get X number of cents for X pound. So you go to the schools and you say, hey, at the end of the school year, I'd like to buy your printer's tin. What's the going rate? You'll get it for a better price than trying to buy it off the companies that buy it off them. And you can cut it off at the pass. Now, you do have to cover the pattern on it because that's what printer's tin is. It gets put on a barrel, and that's how you make labels. But we've used it on the phonographs. We've used it on jewelry.
We built
again,
a Dalek with the bottom
we
half
built
was
the
on
bottom
printer's
half of
tin.
a Dalek out of printer's tin. We had a K9 that had printer's tin for the body. This is, I feel old. Thanks, honey. Thanks for making me feel old. I love you too. So I know we only have a few minutes. We're done.
Pretty much done.
But
So-
they're not going to kick us out because they said they wouldn't.
That's what they told us.
Don't question the Egyptian queen, dude.
Okay.
I was gonna ask if you have any suggestions for keeping paint from chipping off the vacuum form thing, or does it stick?
You can come on up
Off
and
the
take a
vacuum
closer
form
look.
part?
Just please, if you're gonna
If you're
pick that up,
using
do
like
it carefully.
styrene or something like that
Because
as
it
the
no
plastic,
longer
you can come up
flexes.
actually. It'd be easier to talk. I'm not trying to talk over the crowd. Yeah, if you're using styrene or something
Sorry?
like that, as long as you've given it a good
It
sanding,
was, well, they
so
were all
it's,
designed to
a
be
sanded
hinged,
finish,
but
then
the
it should-
permanent, like, some of them were glued into a permanent shape.
This is based on something that she
basically,
designed,
the original ones that
in
came
a,
into-
set of short stories she was